In March, I flew to LA for a picket to celebrate L. Ron Hubbard's birthday, which is usually a big event for Scientology. In all, there were 50 picketers who came from all over the world to defy this organization, which is so consumed with its own self-importance and so intent upon silencing its critics. Obviously, Scientology is not able to confront a handful of peaceful picketers protesting an organization that has devastated so many people's lives. They chose instead, while we picketed, to put tarps up in front of one of their buildings, blue tarps that you would collect your leaves in the fall and things like this, to hide the staff from this small group of picketers marching back and forth on Hollywood Boulevard in front of their building. They actually canceled the birthday party event on L. Ron Hubbard Way, the street they had the city of Los Angeles rename for their beloved founder. They actually canceled the event because the whole street had been taken over by this small band of picketers. When we first went there to L. Ron Hubbard Way, we were told the street is closed. We have a permit from the city. I asked, can we see this permit? The permit said that the street was closed. It didn't say anything about the sidewalks. I said, we're only interested in the sidewalks. So the police were called. They delayed us for a while, but the police were called, and eventually we were able to exercise our rights to free speech and picket on the sidewalks in front of their buildings. That was too much for them. Everybody who was there were taken inside. Before the police actually came, I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with a senior Scientologist who had been in Los Angeles for many, many years, who was married and had a child. But in the Sea Org, when you have a child, you can't stay there in Los Angeles. You need to get out. They sent her to the hinterlands in America. But she assured me that she was perfectly capable of talking to me or anyone else anytime she wanted to, because that's, after all, one of the things that Scientology's creed allows. And we talked. But after about 5 minutes of discussing my impression of her freedoms to speak and freedoms to associate, she being basically the last Scientologist outside at this stage, was told by a security guard that she could no longer talk to me and had to go in. I think this was a real demonstration of how Scientology's creed works. A much smaller group of picketers went to Hemet, the home of Scientology's fearless leader, David Miscavige. We saw nothing but security guards at the gate, security cameras everywhere on the fence surrounding the property, and people literally hiding behind closed windows and curtains, peeping out to see what this group of people were doing out there that the church had required them to stay inside for. Not one person ever came out to confront us. Hemet looked like the Fort Harrison Hotel did in December, completely deserted. I was not the first picketer to arrive, but the first picketer. When he arrived, there were people on the golf course. They have a beautiful golf course there. There were people moving between the buildings. That's when they all had to go in, when the first picketer, the single picketer, first arrived. This is an organization that clearly cowers at the truth. Scientology claims to be able to create supernatural powers and enable people to confront any situation except for one: the truth about Scientology. Perhaps Jesus had an explanation for this anomaly that can be found in John chapter 3, verse 20 to 21, when he warned, "For everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved, exposed, and rebuked. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest and that they are wrought in God. Proving that I was not afraid to shed light on the story I wanted to tell. December started with articles in the St. Petersburg Times, the Boston Globe, the Chicago Tribune, and the New York Times. As these articles came out, I think I became far more threatening to Scientology, because mainstream media were looking more closely at an organization that wants absolutely no scrutiny. This seemed to heighten Scientology's disdain for me and only intensified the picketing and flyers. I've got to speed up a little bit, I'm told so. In the week prior to the McPherson deposition, Scientology hired private detectives to visit my family members, my son, my mother, my brothers, my father, stepmother, aunts, uncles, and untold others. In December, I was also on a WGBH show in Boston, Greater Boston, with Emily Rooney. And when Scientology went to see my family members, they took a copy of this videotape with them and used this tape as a ploy to sit down and show their family member on TV. They bought it. All of my family, no matter what I had done to prepare them, allowed these detectives working for the Church of Scientology to come in and spend, for example, with my mother, 3 hours. I was angry about the visits to my family. It was extraordinarily hurtful. The fact that in such a short period of time while these detectives stayed in Tennessee, some of my own flesh and blood could so question my dedication to them as a family member. It was like having been violated by these detectives when they went into the homes and businesses of my family members, simply to antagonize me, to gather intelligence for their investigation, and to further illustrate their willingness to harass and intimidate someone who was prepared to help people stand up against them. This is where I first felt what I can only describe to you as a cold steel ball of fear in my stomach. Scientology even authorized someone to pass out scurrilous leaflets about me in St. Bart's in the French West Indies last month while I was vacationing there with my wife and daughters. This leaflet, which as you can see the headline on, you probably can't read much else, and it's a GIF copy of the original flyer. It says, "Facts about Robert S. Minton." I won't read it now, but I will leave it up here if anybody would like to see it. In the interest of time, I won't read it now, and I would be happy to answer at a later time today any questions about that. This particular leaflet was far more scurrilous than the ones they were able to pass out on Beacon Hill in Boston, because those they had to sign after they were criticized so much for the first leaflet they handed out, which they did not sign, and many other leaflets they just passed out under cover of darkness. In January of this year, I was served with 2 more subpoenas for depositions in other cases, one in a bankruptcy case in California where I'd given financial support to Grady Ward, an internet critic who was totally unjustifiably attacked by the Church of Scientology, and the other involving a temporary restraining order against another internet critic, Keith Henson, who had been roughed up by a Scientology detective in Los Angeles.